Hey guys, welcome back to Coach Speak. Dustin Martin here with Jamie Bolton, and welcome to our new Leadership Through Scripture series. Something me and Jamie's been talking about for a while now. We're super excited. You know, it's kind of like we're starting a podcast all the way over again, so that's been super cool. But we just want to say thank you for taking a step of faith and tuning in today. I'm going to start us off with a little opening prayer, and then Jamie's going to dive more into what we're talking about today. So join us in prayer if you would. It'd be real quick and short. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for everybody who's tuned in to try to grow, and keep your eyes over me and Jamie as we're trying to do your work and spread the gospel in the way that we see fit. And we're looking forward to this conversation. Amen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, guys, we're truly grateful to have you a part of this journey as Dustin and myself try to explore Scripture, understand its context, uncover leadership principles, and challenge ourselves and become the kind of leaders God calls us to be. If you saw the graphic, we'll be focusing on reading what was posted. If not, we'll dive in and refer to the Scripture. But today, it's about great leaders don't build followers, they build leaders. And I think that's, we're focused on Moses today. He nearly burned himself out trying to do everything himself. And you got to think about it, like he, obviously the leader, through Exodus and leading the Israelites out of Egypt. And then you had all this conflict and everybody's upset and mad. And so ultimately it was Jethro, his father-in-law, that taught him that leadership's greatest principle is healthy leadership, is shared leadership. So let's just talk a little bit about what makes leadership exhausting in general.
That's so good. And it's funny, man, as I read through all this, I felt very convicted, which I think is always a good thing when you're reading through it. We're always pretty vulnerable on here, but like as I read through this, I kind of felt like there's some things in my personal life from a family standpoint, leadership, and then also work leadership, is I like to be a person that tries to take on too much responsibility. So like anytime we're in a staff meeting at work, it's like, hey, who wants to do technology? Who wants to do recruiting? Like I want to help and add as much value as I can. And I'm the same way at home. So it's like, I try to help Catherine with things that, I'll help order the groceries. I'll help, you know what I mean? I just try to help as much as I can. And then sometimes it becomes kind of a bear of, well, man, you're trying to do too much. So you're starting to lack. You're trying to do 10 things at a high level when really you only probably can manage 5 or 6. So, the biggest thing I think, kind of looking at what makes leadership exhausting for me is trying to do too many things at a high level on your own. I think that's the number one thing. It's, we're process driven here. If you've ever listened to us before, and it's hard to follow a process with attention to detail if there's too many processes that you're trying to follow. So
you start checking boxes instead of really diving in deep into what matters, and your relationships start to suffer too, because you don't have time to really build into people. And I think that's
exactly
the other exhausting part. And then you have all this on your plate, and then it's always something. That's always something I always bring up, man. It's one thing after another. There's another comment, but it's always something's going to pop up. And then it's like, that's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And you're like, oh my word, how do we work through this now? Like this is like too much. And so I'm glad that we're kind of getting into, Moses and, how God wants us to be as leaders. And he specifically talks about that in Exodus chapter 18. I can't wait to kind of dive into that.
Yeah. And I think, just some more examples, like what makes leadership exhausting is a big thing's availability. You know what I mean? Like if you're in a role where you need to be available to a lot of different people, like being an athletic director role, like I have to be available to every head coach, to every assistant coach, to every student athlete, because that's who it really matters to. But I think just constant communications and availability. And then I kind of look and I'm like, man, you don't have anything compared to what Moses was doing, or what the Lord has to, you know what I mean? It's just like, just think about like our small roles that we do. It's just really crazy.
Yeah. There's a lot of interesting context to this too. I mean, at one point, God revealed himself to all of the Israelites, and they were so afraid of God, they didn't want to face him. So Moses had to put all that on his shoulders and climb Mount Sinai every time that he met with God, and then tried to explain every little thing that's going on with the people to God, and then bring that back with him. And it just became overwhelming. And you think about that as a leader, if you're going to take on all the burdens of your organization, or like if I see like a principal, like if you didn't have assistant principals, to kind of help delegate those tasks, it would be impossible because we're human. God made us who we are for a reason. And it's not to carry the burdens of every single problem that exists, in our day-to-day life. And that's why God gave us a partner in marriage. Marriage is a big one for that. And that's a biblical thing. And I think when, I can't be a loving, person and and a protector and someone that provides, like you need both. And I think that's something that, as a leader at home too, we have to think about. So.
Yeah, and something that was also interesting when, we're getting ready to dive in a little bit to Exodus chapter 18, but something that was also interesting to me is how often as us as leaders do we kind of feel like we're the middleman in terms of there's someone above us that's maybe providing direction of this is how we have to do things. And then you have people below you that are coming and asking you, hey, like, why is this not happening? Or why are we doing this? And like, you're kind of like, well, hold on, let me go talk to the Lord. Or, you know what I mean? It's like, guys, and that I felt that so much as I read through the story, it's just, I've been in that position before as a head coach, like stuck between assistants, parents, and an athletic director. I'm trying to be aligned and do it the way that I see fit. And then you have people below you that have really good points and really good, why is this? And it's like, sometimes it's not as easy as just saying, well, I'm aligned with the Lord or I'm aligned with the leader that I'm working, because sometimes people don't want to hear that. And that is, I think, a tough part where you really got to put your faith and trust in Him to get through and hey, speak through me, because sometimes I don't have the answers or the ways to say those things.
Exactly. Well, yeah, I think I'm kind of ready to deep dive into this thing, but let's talk a little bit about chapter 18 and give us a little bit of context. So, and kind of cut me off if I say something that's not quite correct. And just disclaimer out there to you guys, we are not pastors, we are not theologians, we have 0 degrees in this. But what me and Dustin both believe in is the Word of God and trying to go through the best that we can through the Word. And so if there's obviously discrepancies, I mean, we're going to try our best here and just hopefully you guys understand where we're coming from with this. So, let's just talk a little bit about where we are in as we get to Exodus 18. So basically, the Israelites at this point have already left Egypt. And God has obviously rescued them. They had the party in the sea, and now they are in the wilderness. And in the wilderness, there wasn't a lot of food, not a lot of resources, but God did provide. He provided manna, which is basically like sky bread, like bread that just came from the sky, but it's not very good. It's like this gooey, like if you guys want to do some research about this, like this gooey consistency. And obviously they were eating that for like a year at this point.
Yeah.
And they were kind of complaining. And so
also it was funny. It's like they would say on the day before the Sabbath, grab enough, and then they would come back on the Sabbath like, bro, like where's the food at? And he's like, man, I told y'all, like grab 2. Like,
I'm gonna provide what you need.
Like
we could do so many like little offshoots on that, but don't you? I mean, I feel that every time,
all the time, like all the time.
But there's tons of disputes, a lot of grumbling going on, a lot of complaining. And everything is seeming to, fall on the shoulders of Moses. And so, and they went directly to Moses, and then Moses would take to God. And it was just such a big ordeal for Moses. He started to stress, and we as leaders feel that all the time.
Yep. So, guys, so we're just going to kind of quickly kind of read through these and hit on some interesting points that kind of we found in the reading, but also kind of what spoke to us. Like Jamie said, disclaimer, we don't have doctorates in theology, but we're just trying to do our part in sharing the mission. But we'll kind of get going. But basically 13 kind of says, I read out of the NIV. It says,
I was going to ask you which one. I'm an ESV guy.
That's cool. ESV, English Standard? Yeah, I like
English Standard versions. Amazing.
Our pastor uses NIV the most, and I will sometimes, when reading, switch between 2 or 3 versions.
I think that's smart. I think it's very smart to do that. I do this. Our pastor actually does that as well. Like we do ESV in our church, but like he'll say, all right, look at this verse. You know what I'm actually going to, this is kind of a weird offshoot. I think I'm actually going to start to learn a little bit of Hebrew for the Old Testament, and then maybe a little bit of Greek for the New Testament. So that's something. Hey, Duolingo. At Duolingo.
Wow. No doubt. Yeah. I just think to me, it's like, we're reading translations, and it's like, I want to like read 2 or 3 because I do feel like he puts on my mind and my heart what I'm supposed to feel about when I read it. So I will like read like NIV and switch to CSB, and then I'll switch to ESV, and then I'll try King James and like, I'm like, all jokes aside, bro, I don't know what they're saying. And that, you know what I mean? It's like it's just not
even the New King
my
James
way. Yeah.
I'll tell you, the Bible Project does a really good job of breaking down the true translation of what the actual words mean, which is
that's
excellent.
awesome.
But anyway,
Yeah.
we'll get going. Sorry, guys.
No doubt. Yeah, all good. It basically says the next day Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people. They stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw that Moses was doing for the people, he said, "What is it that you are doing for the people? Why do you sit alone as judge while all these people stand around you from morning till evening?" And after verse 14, right there it says, a big point that I kind of took is sometimes we're kind of too close to our own leadership to unrecognize unhealthy habits. And immediately, the way my mind works is I immediately think about like my golf swing. The more I do my golf swing, the more those unhealthy habits creep in there, and the worse I get. And it's like, man, I should be getting better, And I think that's just, I like to give like analogies in my head when I read something, like and how it makes sense. But it's like a good point to point out here is, who do you give permission to actually challenge your leadership in the way you're doing something? Because there's going to be people who do it for the wrong reasons, and there's going to be people, I think, that do it for the right reasons. And I think that's why the father-in-law Jethro was put in here for Moses. It's someone who, if my father-in-law gives me, advice on something, I'm going to take that to heart, versus someone who I may not know. It's like, well, I appreciate your opinion, but anyways, we'll kind of get back on it.
Yeah. I think that's important to point out. Like, it can't just be Joe Schmo that you're getting your advice from either.
Yes.
It's got to be someone that you really respect and trust. And also, like, and obviously this is a scripture or biblical viewpoint and a lens that me and you look through. It needs to be someone in your life that you can trust, that can lead and guide you, like biblically and spiritually. I listen to a thing. If you're in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, you should be looking for someone to guide you spiritually. If you're like 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, you should be looking to guide someone. And I think that is someone, like if you're in a church, maybe you can go to someone and say, "Hey, I need you to speak into my life and hold me accountable." If you're in those 20s, 30s, and 40s. And if you're above that, then you need to be looking for someone to pour into. And I think for Moses, Jethro is the ultimate leader for him, because what Jethro did for him, as he, in Moses' story, he was exiled. Like he had to flee Egypt after he murdered the guy or killed the guy. And so then, he found, refuge there, and then obviously married his daughter. And he even tried to get Jethro to come with him, and he wouldn't. Because Jethro had to be a leader himself, but that's someone that he looks to because he trusts him and he knows that he's a man of God. And so I think that's something that I think about when I read verse 14 is, not only do I need to recognize, it's hard for us to recognize those habits because we're human, but put someone in your life that can point out those things to you, that you can fix. And if it's, man, I think about being a coach all the time. It's like, is there an older coach on our staff? And there certainly is for us on our staff. Michael Allen, I'll just speak. I talk to him constantly about things. Hey man, how did that seem? Or give him the authority to tell you without asking. Like, hey man, you might not have. Joey Fowler's another one. That he will. Hey man, I don't know about that. I don't know how about you. You may not respond to the way that you wanted to or came off. I think those are critical.
No, yeah. And I think that's so good to understand what phase of life you're in, and do you need to be guided or do you need to be guiding? It's like, where are we at? And obviously there's a reason for that. You know what I mean? The experience part, that they've been there, they have had more time. And I think, that's pretty like black and white age wise, but there's a point behind that. You should always be challenging or being challenged. And I think that is huge. And it's always good, within your staff to have that, because like you said, Coach Allen and Coach Fowler, they're always, hey man, I know you didn't ask, but for what it's worth. And that means there's a good relationship there.
100%.
And Fowler used to do that. We would talk defense, all kind of stuff all the time, especially if we're playing someone that he knows, hey man, for what it's worth, I hadn't watched any of their offense. However, this is what I know about it. And it's just that, that is a compliment and a form when someone can do that, because they understand there's no ego there. They know that they can approach you, they can come to you. And yeah, fun fact, my pastor says ego stands for edging God out. So that's what he uses. So I like that a lot.
I like that. Let's continue in 15.
Yep, go ahead.
So it says, and Moses said to his father-in-law, because the people come to me to inquire of God, when they have a dispute, they come to me, and I decide between one person and another, and I make them know the statutes of God and his laws. And Moses, as is going into verse 17, Moses' father-in-law said to him, what you are doing is not good. 18, you and the people with you will certainly wear yourselves out, for the thing is too heavy for you. You are not able to do it alone. And I think those are powerful words. I mean,
yes,
he's like, almost like, look, man, they're coming to me. What, like, I'm trying the best I can. He's like, hold on, man,
yep.
You're not doing a good job.
Yeah.
Because you're wearing yourself out. You literally can't. You are not capable, even when God has used Moses. I mean, you think about this. God used Moses and filled him with the Spirit to lead an entire people from one of the greatest, if not the greatest, empires in the world.
Yeah.
And then you can't, and then, so in Moses' mind, like, if he's using me to do that, then I got to do everything.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily, that's what I see in it.
Very true.
And it's like, okay, I'm hired to be,
it's a good point.
The head coach of the Green Bay Packers. Well, I must be anointed, or I must be the one that's supposed to solve all these problems. And I think a lot of that is, one, you're not being fair to yourself, and you probably got a lot of ego to think that you have to do that, and you're going to get bitter and resentful. And then you're going to start to figure out, like, well, is this really my calling? So I think Jethro pointing out, dude, what you're doing is not a good thing here. You need to figure out a way not to wear yourself out.
Yeah, and I think it's also important that understand, like, Jethro isn't criticizing Moses; he's criticizing his method and how he's trying to do it. And I think describing unhealthy systems is the way to show that, to way to get through. It's not, hey man, you as a person are a terrible leader. You're not doing a good job. It's like, listen, what you're trying to do is not sustainable. It's not going to, you can't handle it. And to your point, God gives you the power to, hey man, I know they're going to chase after you. I'm going to continuously harden the Pharaoh's heart. I'm going to allow you to split the sea so y'all can make it through. And then once they get there, I'm going to let the sea go. It's like, I can understand why, as a person in the flesh, is like, oh, well, he does expect me to handle all this and do it all myself. And I think that's such an important part. And it's just,
what does that tell you about leadership? Like, there are moments where God is going to have to, give you one specific task or one specific role, but he's not going to ask you to lead every single individual. You just can't. You're not capable of doing that. You don't have enough. You don't have enough capacity for that. And that's very interesting kind of contradiction there, that you can see where Moses can be confused about that. And then God puts people in Moses' life to correct him, and ultimately do a better job.
Well, it's like from our standpoint, from a coach's standpoint, think about how many times I've done this plenty of times, where you go, it's going to just be easier, or it's going to be done the way I expect to do it if I do it myself. I can't tell you how many times I've done that. Like it's kind of like you say it's easier, but really you're cutting yourself short. Like, rather than taking the time to develop someone and show them the ropes and how to do it, it's like, oh, it's just easier if I do it myself. Well, it might be easier that one time, specific time. Like, hey man, instead of teaching someone how to work the huddle sideline, hey, I'll just set it up. Well, then as a head coach at Cannon, my pregame duties was setting up huddle sideline. It's like, I had to take time to do that. And as we all know, if you're a head coach, like, your game days are like all over the place. And it's like, so that first time it was easier for me, but every week it got tougher and tougher and tougher. And I think that is something to kind of understand. But do you have anything to add before we move on to the next part?
No, go ahead.
Cool. Where'd you live on?
I think I read through 18. Yeah, let's pick up at 19.
So 19. Cool. It says, listen now to me, and I will give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to him. Teach them his decrees and instructions, and show them the way they are to live, how they are to behave. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. And then 22 says, have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. That will make your load lighter because they will share it with you. And I think that's a good point to kind of stop and kind of talk through those a little bit. Man, it's that, if that doesn't spell out the definition of delegation, it's like, listen, as a leader, there are certain things that have to go through you. There's no discussion about it. But finding out what can we delegate, what is feasible to delegate, and then have that communication, that trust between the people you work with to, hey, if it's any of these situations, hey, bring that to me. Let's work through that together. And I think that it's right there in the reading. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't spell it out any easier.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for me of that is, let me make sure I point this out specifically. More, let's go to verse 21. This is the ESV. Moreover, look for able men. Well, what is able? Able means to me, and I don't have the actual, I wish I had the Hebrew word that they used here, but capable. You got to have someone with the capability to do it. You can't just delegate tasks to people that aren't able to do it. And I think that's where we find a lot of struggles as coaches, or even leaders of any organizations, is like, one, I have to build a relationship and know a person enough to know if they're able. I have to hire well. I have to onboard well. I have to educate well. Yes. I have to do all these things from a process standpoint. And then obviously, biblically speaking, it talks about, let's keep reading. So moreover, look for able men from all the people. So all the people. I mean, it's everybody. That doesn't just say the elders. That doesn't say just the young ones. It doesn't say just the ones that played in the league. That doesn't say, it's all the people. And the third thing is men who fear God. And so what that means to me is that align with your values biblically from a character standpoint, but also you're going to see things through the same lens. Yes. And so you have to be able, you have to, from everybody available, and then you have to, and they need to be someone that sees things through the same lens. And I think the biblical piece to that is huge. And they have to be trustworthy. They can't be bribed. It says, and I think those are all hard people to find. And I know that's probably one of the biggest issues for leaders, is finding people to delegate tasks to.
Yeah. And as you're reading that, what pops up in my mind is this should be the same way, not only that we hire people and people we work with, but our personal lives. It is okay to have friends at certain points in your life that slowly dwindle away because the lens changes, and as a young 30-year-old guy, like from 25 to 30, like a lot in my life changed, just kind of what I see as important for me. I got married, and it's like, I still have a lot of great friendships, but I have some friendships from college that, are more just a happy birthday text here or there, or, hey, hope you're doing well. And it's not that they're choosing anything that's bad or wrong. It's just the lens changes, and what I want the lens and to be associated with changes. And I think, so if you go by this when you're hiring, when you're trying to put people there, it's like, I think you have to have a process and plan for everything. And like, you're one of the best at this. It's like, what is our hiring plan? Who do we want to hire? What do we want them to be known for? Well, you know what? Some people may not align morally with their values and say, hey, I'm gonna hire the guy who trains people so I can get the most recruits in our school. That way we can win.
Right.
Well, like that doesn't morally sit right with me. It's like, I want to do things the right way, always, all the time. And it's like, that's what I lean on. And that's kind of why I think we're doing this, is just, this is not just one part of our life that we can apply this. And that's why I like doing this. And I'm super excited about this series, is right now, like you're reading this and you're putting your point of view, and immediately it makes me think how this can apply to every phase of life. It's like, 100%. It's not just a leadership role per se,
Well, think about like you're getting married, a lot of 25-year-olds are probably listening to this, or are unmarried people. And it's like, when you marry someone, you are literally saying, I'm going to delegate my life out. Like, you can't do everything when it comes to a family. So who should you marry? Well, it tells you. And I'm sure there's other places in the Bible too, but the first one, someone capable of, doing the tasks that are going to be required from your partner or your wife or your husband. But it's like capable, someone who fears God, someone who has a respect for God and their commandments and what he tells us how he tells us how to live. someone that's trustworthy. I mean, all those things make so much sense. And then through the hiring process, you don't have to guess on like who to hire. And like you said, if you're going to look for the flashy or we're only going to hire from this, like you're probably, you might get a couple of them right.
Sure.
But if you dive into what God tells us to delegate to, you're never going to be wrong because you can trust them full board. And how much do we talk about loyalty and trust in our profession? It's everything when you make hires.
Yep. No, that's great. Great point to add.
So 23. So if you do this, talking about, how to hire people or how to delegate tasks and who to delegate them to, it says, if you do this, God will direct you. You will be able to endure, and all this people also will go to their place in peace. So Moses listened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he had said. Moses chose able men out of all of Israel and made them heads over the people, chiefs of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. And they judged the people at all times. Any hard case they brought to Moses, but any small matter they decided themselves. Then Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went away to his own country. So going back, he said, and if you do this, God will direct you. He will allow you to endure. And I think that's, what we were kind of talking about. And it obviously ended up happening because Moses was able to eventually delegate a lot of his tasks out to the leaders of those groups.
Yeah, man. And I think that, this is just a part of the reading, like something I wanted to mention. I kind of read all the way from Exodus chapter 1 to chapter 20, kind of while we were studying this week. And I wrote down some things that I think are important that I wanted to share, not only with you, but just kind of with our listeners. But I was reading through chapter 5. And, every time I read, I feel convicted, you know what I mean? Which I think is a good thing. And we do these spiritual assessments at church, when you become members and whatnot. And they tell you like your best, like spiritual gifts that you were given based on how you answer this 100-question thing. And my top 2 were faith and discernment. And, I never really knew how to categorize that kind of growing up as a kid or a teenager, but I always had like this conviction on my heart of knowing what right from wrong, like, probably shouldn't do that. Like I've been told not to do that. And, just to kind of hear that. But chapter 5, kind of what I gained was it said, doing what you're called to do. And this is all summary of how I took it. Doing what you're called to do doesn't mean instant gratification. Doing your calling, understand there could be resistance before a breakthrough. And I think we kind of have this misled interpretation of, hey man, as long as I do what the Lord says, like I'm always going to be favored. I'm always going to get things done the easy way. It's always going to be right just because I followed him. And it's like, it's not necessarily how it is.
Hold on, dude. They beheaded all the Christians that followed Jesus in the New Testament pretty much.
Yep.
So you tell me where that, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like it ain't always going to end up well, it's not, your life ain't going to be easy. Because it's probably going to be harder.
Yep.
And my daughter just got baptized this past week. And, one of the things we were talking to her about was life for you is now going to be harder because you're choosing to follow Jesus. And spiritually, there's a spiritual warfare out there, and you're going to be attacked from a lot of different angles. And you need to be prepared for that because now you are declaring, in this whole in the world that you are going to be a follower of Christ. And I think she needs to, that was a big thing. She's only 9, so it's hard for her to hear that.
Well, so what's funny is that's so great that she just did that. So me and Catherine are doing it next month. So awesome. Like we'd done it when we were kids, but we were just so young. And, with us being married a little over a year now, she kind of came to me and was like, hey, like, I really think I want to get baptized again. Like, I don't really remember it from being a kid. And I was like, well, I said, it's funny you say that. I've been thinking kind of about the same thing. I said, let's just do it together. So it's kind of awesome. Cool because when you get baptized, it's like being reborn in your new life and kind of doing it with her. It kind of symbolizes us doing it together kind of in our new life. So it's, I'm super excited about it,
Very
so
cool,
we're doing that, but that's cool.
Awesome.
Old Coop, man.
Cooper.
Good
she's
for her.
I got to dunk her and everything. That was fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was funny. So we used to do the baptisms in the big font like thing. It was like a big bath, like in the, like on top with the steps, and like you'd have to get in the water.
Yeah.
So they changed on me. I didn't know. So I show up to the service, and It's in like a little bathtub that you stand outside of, and she gets in it.
Oh, she
And I
gets in
wore
it.
my bathing suit and my flip flops into the main thing, and I sat there while 5 other little kids got
Oh,
baptized. And I'm just sitting there in my bathing suit, and I never
uh-oh.
got wet, so I was like super embarrassed.
That's hilarious.
But no, it was good. I don't
Well,
think
man,
anybody
I
even
grew up
noticed.
in good old Georgetown, South Carolina. So baptisms, we were Southern Free Will Baptist Pentecostal faith. There's no no baptism tank in our church, so we go out to the local pond,
Dude, that's
and
awesome.
that's where we did it.
Heck yeah.
So, but
After y'all
no,
was running the
man,
aisles for a little bit.
yeah,
I hear you, dude. I love it. I love it.
man,
That's
for
good
sure.
stuff.
No, that's
That's
awesome.
awesome.
But wait, man, let's
Good
kind of
deal.
move into our
Yeah.
final segment. We've kind of hit on a couple of these. We just want to make sure, but we've kind of talked today about what has happened to Moses and things in his lifetime and what he went through. Now let's kind of bring this back around to our world, and what does this look like for us as, spouses, teachers, coaches, leaders, whatever it may be. And so we got a couple principles that we pulled out of this reading that we felt that we want to kind of remind and give some examples. So we'll kind of go into principle 1 here, and it's like understanding, I think some people look at delegation and go, yeah, man, I'm going to delegate the task I don't want to do, and I think that's such a terrible outlook. It's like, oh man,
like laundry.
Yeah. Oh man, you know what? The Lord told me to delegate. Hey, you're on laundry duty. I'm not going to do any of it. So understand, it's not about making your life easier. It's really important to understand that delegation should be development. So if there's anybody, like you talked about earlier, listen to the podcast on either guiding or being guided. That's what it is. It's like, I'm going to guide you in case you ever want to be in this chair. And even if you don't, I want you to understand that there's a lot of parts that go into making this work. The old adage, it takes a village. And it's like, make sure you're delegating because you want to give someone the opportunity to grow in that,
Yeah.
And now, may delegating relieve you? Like we just talked about it. We don't want to be overstrained. Yes. But it's not all right, let me list everything I like doing and everything I don't like doing, and I'll make sure that these are delegated.
Well, and that's a preferential thing. And I think
Yes.
we have to avoid preferences as a leader. What you need to look at is being intentional about delegating tasks to people that are good at those tasks. Like you have to identify who is a great, equipment manager type person. Someone that's probably type A, like spreadsheets. They really enjoy. I don't know if they have to enjoy it or not. Again, we talk about
Sure.
do they like doing it or not. We don't always like the job that we have, but you got to identify people for that. Then you got to identify someone that can maybe be someone in your on your staff to maybe help with leadership development or character development, and then maybe head that up. And so maybe somebody on social media, someone that's tech savvy. That's where I feel like you have to look at, all right, let me get, and going into hiring process, and there's a really good book by Jim Collins, and the book Good to Great talks about getting the right people on the bus first, and then determining where the bus goes. And then I even took it to the next step of how the bus operates, like who's going to drive, who's going to navigate, who's going to set up the seating chart, all that stuff. And I think once you get the right people, and God talks about the right people being able. All right, if we go back to, I think it's verse 21, able men that fear God and are trustworthy and they can't be bribed. If you bring all those people in, you're going to see different skill sets. And I think that's why God says all people, because you want some diversity in your room, because that diverse group of people will have different skill sets that then you can then say, hey man, go to work on these tasks and let's do this together with the overarching vision that the leader gives. And I think that's something that you have to be intentional about as a leader.
Yeah. And I think, that added into that, being self-aware enough to know what your strengths and weaknesses are and who you need to surround yourself with, and defining an ideal. This is who I am. This is what I'm good at. Here's what I'm not good at. So we need to make sure when we're looking at candidates, okay, I'm not good in these realms. So people who also check a lot of other boxes that we are important, the same lens, the morals, but it's they are really good at these skill sets, which I think also on your resume, don't just put, oh, I'm great at Microsoft Office. Okay. What is your skills? What do you like to do? And I think, in our profession, what we do, resumes have to be more personable, not just hey, here's the standard outline and put, they have to be professional, but like it's going to go a lot more with me if like under your skill set you put, I truly enjoy like scheduling and spreadsheets, like actually like what do you like doing?
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part.
That way you could start to feel like, okay, they can kind of see me in this role.
Sure.
Like they can start to kind of figure out, okay, this guy pans out. He's got some experience here. He actually enjoys this. He has a passion for this area. I think that's a really good deal. You ready? So principle 2, ready to go on to principle 2? All right. So you have to develop people before you delegate to them. And I think that's huge. So it's not only identifying a skill, it's not only saying these tasks need to be done, but it's like, and not just saying, hey man, I need you to set up, I don't know, the laundry list thing or whatever. You're in charge of the equipment, let's say. You can't just say, go do it. You need to give them a process, and then they need to work that process, and then you need to help them with that process. And then as they go, I could see them kind of refining that process to make it better, not just their own. And I hate that, like, I'm going to make it my own, just like, no, we have a process here that works. If you have suggestions to make it better and more efficient, then that is what the leader needs to hear, and that's what needs to be implemented.
Yeah. And the first thing that pops in my mind is like painting the fields. Like that's a process. That's not just, hey guys, can y'all go paint the practice field for me? Yeah. Once everything's built, you might just be able to roll a painter out there and go over the lines, but that may not be the process. Hey guys, like I know it's a pain, but like we need to pull the lines to ensure that we continue to be straight. Or, it's whatever it may be. Hey, we have a machine that does it. Well, here's how you load it. Here's how you clean it. Here's how we store it. And it's like, it's not that someone may intentionally do the wrong thing. It's lack of communication on the way we do things. And it's like,
because you're going to get frustrated if it doesn't get
exactly. If you don't teach and equip them with the way that you want it done, then they're never going to meet the expectations. It's just not going to happen.
It's a failure of leadership.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's where, and then like a question kind of pops up, like, have we ever blamed someone or something was never taught to them? Have we blamed them that's their fault?
Oh, 100%.
I'm guilty.
I've been super guilty of that. I can refer to one specific moment, and I was the head coach, and I couldn't get the ball. Like we didn't have a coach to spot the ball, and I was like, can we get? I'm like left hash. I'm starting. Nobody's spotting the ball, and I'm like, don't worry, guys. I'll do it.
I'll do it.
and then like I went on this tirade, like I'll do the laundry. I'll do the ball spotting. I'll do the offense. Like I just went in.
Oh yeah.
And ultimately I ended up reaching out to each one of the coaches that were on the field after that and saying, that's my fault. I apologize for calling everybody out because that's my failure of leadership. But then I made sure on the practice schedule, I not only put the name of the coach that's in charge of spotting the ball, but I had a conversation with them, like what that means. Like, this is what I mean. Like, so you had to like walk them through it, but you can't leave any stone unturned when it comes to delegation. And I think it's just, you can't just write it down. You have to teach how to do it, equip them with the skill set, and then trust them to do it. You have to trust them to do it. And then you have to evaluate. And then from there, you can kind of, feed back into that loop. So,
because even the most successful process can be better. Because guess what? When you developed it, might have been 8 years ago, and things may be different. Like, coach, you may measure with this kind of measuring tape, but dude, have you seen what they have out? Like, we don't have to do all that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, man, I've heard, I've never been a part, but I've always heard about, man, we had to go to parking lots and exchange film in person. Well, I get it. But it's like, what if we didn't adapt the process? You know what I mean? Like, what if we were still like, oh man, I'm going to drive 2 hours and meet this coach for film?
Well, it's like, just think about that with scheme, like in any sport, scheme changes. Like there's a lot of similarities to how things were done, but I think the best schemes change to make things more efficient or packaging or whatever. It's like your process can always be better. It doesn't have to be different, but it could be certainly more efficient. It could be taught better. It could be onboarded better. There's always something that it can be refined to make things a little bit simpler and smoother.
Yeah, no, totally agree. That's such a good principle, man. I like that. Teach, equip, and trust and evaluate. All right, last principle, kind of go through, and then we'll kind of hit our closing. Number 3 is basically great leadership should multiply, and if you were able to do the reading that was posted on the graphic, this is really what the Ephesians chapter 4, 11 through 16 was with. But basically the key idea is understanding that, equipping others for the work. The leader isn't supposed to personally perform every single function. If that was the case, you wouldn't hire anybody else. It would only be the leader and the leader only. So understand that leaders have to prepare others to fulfill those roles. So, we always talk about this, but at the end of your career, how do you want to measure success as a leader? Is it wins and championships, promotions, or how many people became better leaders because they were led by you? And I think we talked about this on our other podcast, the other series all the time. We're not defined by the scoreboard on this world. We're going to be defined by something completely different on what win and losing means. And it's great leadership should multiply. And at the end of the day, if I never win a state championship, because I've never had the opportunity to, but I have impacted kids that went on to be great leaders, or I've impacted other coaches that I've helped them become leaders in some way, that's what I want to be known for when we talk about that legacy piece.
Yeah. And, going back to the great commandment, of go out and make disciples, when Jesus, leaves for the final time, that's our calling. And I think what that really means is, make disciples that make disciples that make disciples that make disciples. And I think you have to have that in mind when you go into your daily life. And where it should start first is in your house, is in your home. You should make disciples in your home first, because then their kids are going to be disciples. You know what I mean? So it's a generational thing. And then at work and your professional life, you're trying to do the same thing. You're trying to equip other people to not just perform random tasks. You're there to equip them to lead in a way. And you can do that in multiple ways. I think you could do it, one, by giving them some autonomy, over that. And allowing them the freedom, like we said before, to kind of tweak processes and all that stuff. But really, you can also do it by example. You could show people what it means to be a leader through your character and through your actions, and how your presence makes everybody's lives easier, because I do believe in servant leadership. You should serve the people. You don't just tell them what to do. That's just asking someone to make your life easier. That's not delegation in a biblical sense. It's equipping and empowering people. And the only way you can do that is build relationships and to understand that you're helping them become leaders to help other people become leaders. Sure. I think that's a legacy that I would certainly like to leave.
Exactly. And that servant leadership piece is huge. I always try to make sure that everyone that quote unquote works under me, AKA when I'm in a leadership role, that there's no task I will ask you to do that I'm not willing to do myself. There's not one thing I'll ask you to do. Like we hired a new strength coach this year, and I said, listen, the weight room's pretty filthy. It needs to be cleaned. What time and day works for you? Because I'm going to help reset this. I'm going to get in there and help you clean this weight room. And that's not me trying to pat myself on the back. I wouldn't ask him as a brand new strength coach, hey man, clean that weight room, make sure it looks good. I know it's not where it needs to be. I also am new in this role. You're new in this role. Let's attack this together and set the standard of what we want this room to look like moving forward at all times. Think
about his perspective now. Yes. Not only is my leader asking me to do a task, yes, but my leader's also saying, I'm going to get my hands dirty too. And I'm going to show you how I would like it done. And then from there, if I do it this way, there is no gray area. This is how it's supposed to be done. If I do that, there's no gray area. And I think as someone that has a leader over them, we always have a leader. We don't want any gray area. And I think about that with our boss, right? You don't want any gray area with your spouse. But ultimately, and I always run into this. I'm like, am I doing what God is asking me to do? And you know what? Every single time, I would probably know if I read the Bible more.
Bingo.
And I think, if am I being the leader God wants me to be? Well, if I just pray and pray and pray and God give me peace over my heart, if I'm a good leader, that's not it. I need to get in the Word and understand what He wants me to be. Yes. And I got to do a better job of that. That's why I'm so excited about going through this series, is because this spoke to me, man, about my sphere of influence. Am I doing that? Am I surrounding myself with that? Am I equipping those people around me? Am I making their lives easier by serving them? And not just easier, but am I helping them, perform their duties and tasks better and more and in more fulfilling ways?
Yeah. And I think it's kind of the same thing when you're a leader on a team as a player, is you set the standard. And it's like, we all have days we don't want to be there. We all have days we don't want to follow the process. We all have days that we want to take the shortcut. And as soon as you show and allow that, then it confides the other person of, okay, like we can kind of shortcut it, and we're all guilty. There's things I still shortcut these days. It's just who I was an instigator in school. I was going to read at the very last moment and do the paper the night before. And it's like, that's not a great example. So, in a leadership role, it convicts me more to, I need to be on my P and Qs even more, because I don't want to set bad examples or allow for the misinterpretation of grace and the misinterpretation of slacking off, because there is a fine line in those two. But man, this has been great. Let's kind of move on to our last part. This is we're going to call, I guess, the closing / the weekly challenge that we want to kind of challenge y'all. We're going to go through the challenge with you. But basically, this whole episode has been about delegation. So this week, we want to try to delegate one responsibility, and don't do it because you're busy, but do it because someone else out there that you work with right now, or you live with, or you're a family member or a friend with, that needs the opportunity to grow, and then understand, like, the challenge is not only are you going to delegate a duty, it's asking yourself, okay, I did the delegation. Did I lose control, or did I multiply leadership? And that's something. So what me and Jamie are going to kind of end with is, we're going to kind of talk to our specific fields on one thing that we're going to try to delegate this week. And it don't have to be a major, like, hey, you're over scheduling officials this week. Like, is that something you could walk through with someone? Yeah, but it doesn't have to be a huge one. So Jamie, I'll let you go first.
Yeah,
it could be
I'll
whatever
actually tell you one that I did
it.
this past week. And it wasn't great. So we actually had a new piece of technology that we introduced to our staff for sideline charting. And I was so busy during the week, and it was kind of late. We were playing on Friday, and I was like, "Hey man, here's a login. Figure it out." That was like the worst delegation that you could ever think about. And you know what? He did it, and he's asking me questions. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Please take care of this for me.
Yeah, did that. I did like the same exact thing last night. Like,
so it's like, that's the worst way that I could have done it. But thankfully, I did the right thing of identifying someone that I knew I could put on, and they're taking off with it. And but I am to the point now where I could sit down and really, set up a process. But I didn't even have a process set up. It was just like, hey man, do it and figure it out. And sometimes you have to do that. But I need to make sure I quote unquote. But
you also know based on hiring and working and relationships who can handle that and who can't. Who can, who has the ability to care so much that if you gave it to them and say, man, I don't really know much about this, figure it out, that they're like, coach, I'm on it. I'm a deep dive in it. And I think that's all comes back down to, who are you surrounding yourself with?
And identifying those people. Yep.
Yes. And one for me was, we have someone within our building who's been with us for a while. And they got moved to an assistant AD role this year, based on who they are, their commitment, their work ethic. And, I have taken basically my scope of work, and I've kind of divided, like, here's what I think that you would be great at, so I've done a lot with that, and there's even times where, like, she's really great at, we may have like a match. So one thing is, like, I wanted to split up the social media duties, working with you, like, I love the social media aspect. I love doing it, but
I can tell.
But it's like with everything that I have going on in the role, it's like, I got to split the social media. I can't do it all. So I said, hey, let's split it up. Like, you be over like game day posts. Like, you do the game day posts, I'll do the game day recaps. And it's like, which we do on our app, not on social media. And like the other day, I'm sitting there and like my phone starts blowing up. It's like in one Instagram, and I'm like, what is going on? And it's like, game day post was out, and like she went on the platform we use. She found pictures. She did a huge job. It's like, it's like something I totally forgot about. She does a really good job with.
So guys, to your point, just to follow up, and I want to shout out Coach Ashworth at Rock Hill. He's the one I delegated to, and then he made this process where last night we're playing Irma, a big game, and I start getting these messages on my phone, and it's him sharing the notes with me. So what he does is he takes the chart and then summarizes each drive and texts me to my phone. That way I can get it at any time. And it's like, I did a great job of delegating because that process is way better than what would have ever come up with.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so that's a shout out to him. And people are great, man. People do a really good job when you can entrust and empower.
Yeah, I agree, man. Man, this has been awesome. It's everything
Awesome
I
episode.
thought it would be, man.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit more. So what we
No
are
doubt.
going to do is we want to keep this an open dialogue. So what we want to do, even though we're moving on, you're listening to this on Sunday. We're going to post what the next episode, so LTS number 2, is going to be. It's going to be about, we're going to talk about Nehemiah and basically building culture before building walls, I think, which kind of ties in a little bit to what Jamie was talking about, like who do you get on the bus before you drive the bus, which is super cool. So we'll post the reading that we're going to do for this next week. Hopefully you can follow along throughout the week and give you something to kind of study and look forward to next week's episode. But guys, if you have any questions or anything you want, we're going to do where you can message us, whether it's Instagram, X, wherever, and kind of give us any questions that you'd like us to talk about or just scenarios. And what we're going to do is we'll start the next episode off with those questions. We'll say, hey, last week we talked about, Moses and delegation through leadership. If you have some questions on our next episode, we're going to go through those and kind of address them. So definitely reach out. If there's anything you would love to learn more about, we kind of have this series planned out, but we may be able to tie into a couple of the episodes of, hey, I really could, do a better job if y'all could talk about this as a leader. This is something I've always felt struggled in. So definitely open, but we're super excited about this series.
Yeah, guys. Can't wait to see you guys in the next one.
See you.